Have you ever felt like life keeps moving just a fraction faster than you, as if you are always arriving after the moment has already passed? Watching your own experiences like a replay instead of living them as they happen, sensing that by the time you react, the opportunity is already fading. The words you wanted to say now belong to a conversation that has already shifted. The decision you needed to make has already been made without you, leaving you with a quiet frustration you cannot quite name. A subtle heaviness that follows you into your relationships, your work, your dreams, as if some invisible barrier separates you from the immediacy of reality, keeping you half a step behind your own life. What if I told you there is a reason for this? Not just bad timing or distraction, but a built-in delay in the way your mind processes reality. Neuroscience shows that the brain receives and interprets signals about 0.2 to half a second after events occur, which means what you think of as the present is already the past. You are experiencing life as a memory even while you call it now. This tiny gap shapes the way you move, think, and feel. It is why in moments of crisis, instinct takes over, bypassing thought entirely. Like the former firefighter in Texas who once found himself surrounded by flames, his mind silent, his body moving faster than words, dragging a fellow crew member to safety before his conscious mind even realized what had happened. Yet outside such extreme situations, we stay in the lag, reacting instead of creating, thinking instead of being. And that lag can cost you more than time. It can cost you the richness of living fully awake if you have felt the ache of missing your own life while you are still in it. If you have wondered why the most important moments seem to slip through your fingers, then stay with me, because what comes next may alter the way you move through every second from now on. If your mind is always behind, how can you truly touch the real present? You touch the present by stopping the effort to grasp it, because the moment you try to hold it, it is already gone. Like water slipping through your fingers, the harder you clench, the faster it escapes. And yet there is a place before the words, before the stories, before the mind begins to divide reality into labels and judgments. A silent field where perception is raw and unfiltered, where colors are brighter, sounds sharper, sensations more alive. It is here that creativity flows without force, where intuition whispers without the static of constant commentary. Science calls it the pre-verbal space, the domain beyond deliberate thought. Studies on the brain's default mode network reveal that even when you are resting, when you believe you are doing nothing, your mind is alive with connections, images, and leaps of insight that cannot be summoned by will. This is why the artist in Brooklyn said her most groundbreaking idea for an exhibition did not arrive when she was sketching or planning, but when she was washing dishes, warm water running over her hands. Attention loose, no pressure to produce. In that openness, the idea appeared fully formed, free from the interference of the thinking mind. And you have likely tasted this yourself in moments when you forget to push. When you lose yourself in a walk, in music, in the way sunlight hits the floor, and suddenly a solution to a problem arrives or a vision for a project appears. No struggle, no mental wrestling, just an arrival. Yet most of us live caught in the current of our own thoughts, constantly analyzing, replaying, predicting. And in doing so, we miss the doorway into this deeper awareness. The more you chase the present, the more it hides. But when you stand still, when you soften your grip, it comes to meet you. The invitation is simple, but not always easy. It asks you to pause, to let the chatter fade without fighting it, to trust that awareness itself is enough. You have been taught to solve, to control, to direct every moment. But what happens when you allow instead of force? When you receive instead of chase, you begin to see what was always here, waiting under the noise. Have you ever wondered what might emerge if you stopped trying to capture the present and instead let yourself be captured by it? If the voice in your head kept interrupting, how would you step beyond it? You do not need to silence the voice. You only need to recognize it is not you. Because the moment you believe that every thought is your own truth, you hand over the steering wheel of your life to a stream of stories, judgments, and fears. And fears that were built over years, sometimes from experiences you barely remember. This voice repeats old narratives, keeps wounds open, warns you of dangers that no longer exist, and measures you against standards that were never yours. It speaks with such familiarity that you mistake it for your identity. Yet when you pause and observe, you notice it behaves like background radio, always playing, sometimes relevant. Often not. Mindfulness training shows that simply noticing this voice reduces activity in brain regions linked to self-narrative by more than a third, freeing space for new perception. Consider the entrepreneur in Silicon Valley who once carried the title of failed CEO like a weight. Every decision filtered through the belief that he had already lost until he saw that this was just a label repeated in his mind, not the essence of who he was. In that recognition, the voice lost its power, energy returned, and within a year, he built a second company that flourished. The shift did not come from erasing his thoughts, but from understanding that their existence did not define him. When you create distance between awareness and the inner monologue, suffering begins to dissolve, because the voice may still speak, but it no longer commands. It becomes one of many sounds in the environment, like wind outside a window and in that space. Your actions stop being reactions to an old script. They start emerging from a deeper intelligence that is present in every moment. You realize you have been carrying a narrator that insists on telling you who you are, and that you can listen without obeying, you can acknowledge without agreeing, and you can live without being bound to its version of you. If you have ever felt trapped by recurring doubts, fears, or criticisms in your head, imagine what it would feel like to hear them without being moved by them, to watch them pass like clouds instead of letting them become the sky. Because when the identity built by thought is set aside, something else steps forward. And the question then becomes, if the self you thought you were is not the one leading, what is? It is not who is leading, but what you are being, because beyond the roles, the names, the shifting identities, there is a field of awareness that shapes reality simply by observing it. In quantum physics, this is not philosophy, but experiment. The double-slit study shows that particles behave differently when watched, collapsing waves of possibility into a specific form. This means that at the most fundamental level, attention itself influences what becomes real. And when you see yourself, not as the character inside the story, but as the presence in which the story appears, you begin to step into the same creative principle. In this place, life is not a fixed script, but a living canvas where every potential exists until you engage with it. The teacher in California understood this when faced with a classroom labeled underperforming, instead of accepting the role of a struggling educator. She chose to stand in the identity of someone holding open the highest possibility for each student without forcing. Without predicting who would succeed, she created an environment where they were seen not for their past scores but for their untapped potential. Within a year, the same group became the highest scoring in the district. This was not magic. It was the shift from reacting to an old narrative to embodying a state where new outcomes could emerge. When you live from the awareness of what you are being rather than who you think you are, limitation loosens, possibilities multiply, and your role changes from follower of events to initiator of them. You realize that life does not happen to you in a straight line. It unfolds in response to the quality of consciousness you bring to it. If you keep replaying the old script, the same scenes will repeat. But the moment you stop reciting it, the scene changes, and so does the ending. This is not about controlling every detail, but about aligning with the frequency of the reality you wish to experience, holding it in awareness without clinging, allowing the observation itself to guide action, and the question is no longer who will take you forward. But what state of being will you choose to inhabit, and from that state? What world will appear? You turn possibility into reality with a single step taken right now. Because every dream, every change, every breakthrough lives or dies in the gap between intention and movement. And in that space, hesitation can grow like a wall. The longer you wait, the thicker it becomes. The mind fills it with doubts, excuses, and visions of failure until the weight of inaction feels heavier than the task itself. The 5-second rule cuts through this. When you feel the impulse to act, you count backward 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and move before the brain has time to pull you back into safety. This countdown is not just a trick, it is a neurological switch. It shifts control from the limbic system, where fear and habit live, to the prefrontal cortex, where decision and action take place. Thousands have used it to break cycles of delay, start conversations, leave toxic situations, launch businesses, and change the course of their lives. Mel Robbins brought it to the world, but its power lies in its simplicity. Because the window between thought and action is short, and once it closes, the moment is gone. Take the single mother in Florida who dreamed of opening a bakery but was trapped by the idea that she was not ready. Each day she told herself she would start tomorrow. Until one morning she counted down, picked up the phone, and booked a booth at a local market. From there, momentum carried her forward. Within a year, she had her own store and the financial freedom she once thought was impossible. The magic was not in the market stall or the recipes. It was in the decision to move while the energy was alive. Hesitation starves momentum, action feeds it. And the first step does not need to be perfect. It only needs to happen before doubt returns. When you adopt this habit, you begin to see that change is not about giant leaps, but about hundreds of small launches taken before fear can anchor you. Each countdown is a declaration that you will not wait for confidence to arrive. You will create it through motion, and the moment you move, the world rearranges in response. Doors appear where there were none, support arrives from unexpected places, and life starts to align with your forward energy. This is how possibility becomes tangible, by meeting it with action before it fades into another lost chance. So the question is, once you have stepped through that opening, what will keep your fire burning beyond the first move? Motivation does not come from willpower, but from brain chemistry, because the force that keeps you moving toward a goal is not simply disciplined. It is the steady release of dopamine, the neurotransmitter that signals anticipation and reward. Without it, even the most inspiring vision will feel heavy. Every task will seem harder, and progress will slow until it stops. Dopamine is not about pleasure alone. It is about drive. It is the brain's way of telling you there is something worth pursuing. The challenge is that most people rely on short bursts of excitement to get started and then watch it fade, leaving them wondering why they cannot sustain effort to keep the fire alive. You must understand the system. Andrew Huberman's research at Stanford shows that high dopamine tone supports long-term pursuit, and this can be cultivated by learning to enjoy the process, not just the finish line. When you attach reward only to the end result, your chemistry spikes at the start and the end, leaving a long stretch in the middle where energy dips. But when you pair progress itself with moments of satisfaction, you keep the system active. This can be as simple as setting small milestones, reflecting on gains each day, or using the worse state technique, where you deliberately recall a time when conditions were harder, energy lower, and possibility smaller. This contrast fuels appreciation for the present challenge and triggers a rise in drive, the limbic friction you feel. That resistance to begin is not proof of laziness. It is the brain's cost calculation, weighing effort against reward. Lowering that friction can be done by controlling environment, reducing distractions, and pairing demanding work with cues the brain links to positive states. The veteran in Arizona used breathwork and cold exposure to reset his system, breaking the cycle of depression that had kept him static. These practices increased dopamine naturally, gave him mental clarity, and within months he was training daily, building strength and coaching others. His life did not shift because of sudden inspiration, but because he learned how to create the conditions for sustained momentum. The truth is, you do not have to wait for motivation to appear. You can engineer it by managing the inputs your brain responds to. When you treat drive as a chemical state you can influence, rather than a mysterious feeling you must hope for, you gain control over your own energy. And each day you make choices that feed the fire instead of draining it. The question then becomes, once the fire is steady, how do you live in alignment with your truest self? You live authentically when you dare to let the world see both the light and the shadows within you. Because the truth of who you are is not only the polished parts you present, but also the messy, uncertain, and unpolished layers that you often hide. Authenticity is not about perfection. It is about congruence, the alignment between what you value, what you believe, and how you show up. When your actions reflect your real priorities instead of the roles you think you should play, you create a life that feels solid beneath your feet. Vulnerability is the doorway to that life. Research by Brené Brown shows that allowing yourself to be seen in your full humanity deepens connection and builds trust. It also strengthens the resilience needed to face challenges without losing yourself. Yet most people wear masks shaped by fear of rejection or the hope of approval. These masks can win temporary acceptance, but they also create a constant tension between the image you project and the person you actually are. The YouTuber in Los Angeles learned this when years of hiding his financial collapse left him feeling isolated. The turning point came when he made a video admitting his debts and failures. Instead of losing his audience, he received thousands of messages from people who saw themselves in his story, and unexpected collaborations emerged. His openness became the seed of new opportunities. Living in your highest self does not mean being fearless or endlessly confident. It means choosing to act from your core values even when it is uncomfortable. It means sharing the wins without pretending there were no struggles, and admitting the struggles without losing sight of your worth. When you stand in this truth, life becomes less about managing impressions and more about expressing what is real. And in doing so, you give others silent permission to do the same. The reflection you receive from the world shifts because you are no longer performing. You are participating as your whole self. The alignment between your inner world and outer action creates a quiet power, one that does not need to shout to be felt. And while it will not shield you from all pain, it will ensure that your path is your own. Every choice rooted in authenticity builds a foundation that cannot be taken by circumstance. You become less dependent on praise and less shaken by criticism, because you are no longer negotiating your worth through other people's perceptions. Instead, you measure it by your fidelity to your own truth. This way of living does not have a final destination. It is a continual practice of showing up, of revealing both your strength and your flaws, and trusting that the wholeness they create is far more compelling than any image of perfection you could construct. And so the question arises, if this journey has no finish line, what does it mean to keep walking it? There is no destination because you are already there. Yet the mind keeps convincing you that peace, fulfillment, and clarity are somewhere in the future, hidden behind goals, achievements, or the perfect set of circumstances. This chase creates the illusion that you must constantly strive toward a place you have never been. But awakening is not about reaching a point. It is about recognizing the ground you are standing on. The paradox of meditation is that the harder you try to arrive, the further you feel from arrival. Because effort in this context becomes another layer of seeking, another way of confirming the false belief that you are incomplete. True presence begins when you stop trying to capture it, when you allow the constant push forward to dissolve. And what remains is the awareness that has been with you all along. Science supports this shift. Studies show that meditation reduces activity in the amygdala, the brain's center for fear and threat detection, lowering stress and increasing the capacity to notice life as it unfolds without being hijacked by constant reaction. In practice, this means you are less pulled into mental storms and more able to rest in the simplicity of what is here. The engineer in Seattle discovered this after years of overwork and restless searching, believing that if he just earned more, learned more, or achieved more, he would finally feel settled. Eventually, he took 3 months away from his career, choosing to live simply, walk in nature, and strip his days of unnecessary noise. To his surprise, the calm he had been chasing did not come as a result of adding anything new, it appeared. As he subtracted the distractions that had kept him from noticing it, the absence of constant striving created space for stillness. And in that space, he found the sense of home he thought was elsewhere. The lesson here is that what you are seeking is not hidden. It is overshadowed by the layers of doing and becoming you have been taught to maintain. The invitation is not to add more, but to let go of what blocks your view. Not to improve the self, but to see through the idea that the self is lacking. This can feel unsettling because without the chase, the mind wonders what will drive you. Yet this is the beginning of a different kind of movement. One guided by clarity instead of urgency, by alignment instead of fear. When you understand you are not on a path to completion, but already whole, the quality of your actions changes. You still work, create, and engage, but without the weight of proving yourself. Each moment becomes both the journey and the arrival. You are no longer postponing your life for a future version of yourself. You are living it now, and in this living, there is nothing to hold on to and nothing missing. The real question that emerges is, if you are already where you have been, trying to go, why is there still a need to awaken at all? Because when one person awakens, the entire field of consciousness vibrates. Your shift is not an isolated event contained within your skin, but a ripple that extends outward, touching lives you may never meet and influencing environments without. A single spoken word, consciousness functions like a field, interconnected and responsive when you raise your own state. You alter the frequency of that field, and others can feel it whether they realize it or not. This is not poetic metaphor alone. Studies on the Maharishi effect have shown that when a group meditates with coherent intention, measurable changes occur in the surrounding community, including drops in crime rates and aggression. It is as if the calm, clarity, and compassion cultivated within individuals become part of the invisible atmosphere everyone breathes. This means your personal transformation carries collective weight. The community in Vermont proved this when they began daily group meditation. Meeting each morning in a small hall without fanfare, no campaigns, no speeches, just the consistent practice of aligning their minds toward peace. Within 6 months, local reports showed a significant decline in violent incidents. The area felt different, lighter, and people began noticing changes in their own behavior toward neighbors, not because they were told to change, but because the overall tone had shifted. What you do for your inner state is therefore never just for you. When you resolve internal conflict, you reduce the amount of conflict in the shared field. When you cultivate joy, you add to the pool of joy available to all, even if it is imperceptible, moment to moment. The effect is cumulative. Imagine countless individuals each tending to their own awareness. The result is a global network of higher frequency interaction, compassion replacing suspicion, creativity replacing fear. This is why living awake is an act of service. You may never see the direct outcome of your presence in someone's life, but presence works in ways that bypass the mind's accounting. It touches through resonance, and resonance is contagious. Think of times when you entered a room and immediately felt at ease because of one calm person, or when someone's grounded. Attention helped you steady your own. In the same way, your commitment to clarity can help anchor those around you. And this does not mean imposing beliefs or convincing anyone to follow your path. It means embodying the qualities you wish to see reflected, holding them consistently so that others feel safe enough to align with them too. The transformation of the world begins with the smallest unit of change, the shift in one person's awareness, multiplied over and over until the field itself evolves. And while the mind often asks what difference one individual can make, the truth is, one shift is never just one. It is a signal sent into the shared human network, received by more than you can measure. This understanding turns personal growth from a private pursuit into a contribution to the whole. And in that recognition, a deeper responsibility emerges. You are part of a living web. Every action, every thought, every choice participates in the shaping of it. So the question is not whether you are influencing the field, but how. And when you see that, the final step to living with effortless awareness becomes clear. The final step is that there is no step left, only to be here, because the search that has carried you through challenges, questions, and revelations was never leading to a distant summit. It was guiding you back to the place you never left, the home within awareness itself. To be present in this way is not to abandon life, but to meet it without the filters of constant judgment or the compulsion to control. When you are simply here, thought can arise and pass without pulling you away. Emotions can move through without becoming your identity. Sensations can be felt without clinging or resisting. This is what effortless awareness feels like. A steady openness in which everything is allowed to come and go. Research by Sarah Lazar at Harvard shows that long-term meditation physically changes the brain, increasing gray matter in areas linked to positive mood, empathy, and resilience, suggesting that the capacity for this state is not just philosophical, but biological. It can be cultivated, strengthened, and made a natural way of being. The former lawyer in New York discovered this after years in high-pressure litigation, where each day was a battle of strategy and will. The constant mental strain left him feeling hollow despite his success. One day, he chose to walk away, selling most of his possessions, simplifying his life, and beginning a daily meditation practice. He opened a free class in his neighborhood, sharing nothing more than the invitation to sit and breathe. Over time, he found a joy that was not tied to winning or losing, a contentment that did not depend on external events. He often said he had never felt so alive. The beauty of presence is that it is not achieved by adding anything, but by letting the unnecessary fall away. When you stop trying to arrive, you discover you are already where you were meant to be. And in this realization, life does not become static. It becomes vivid because you are meeting each moment fresh, without the weight of carrying the past or the tension of reaching for the future. You still engage, create, and connect, but without the undercurrent of striving that once defined your movement. This is why the journey ends in stillness, because stillness is not the absence of action, but the absence of unnecessary struggle. And from here, the mind may still try to ask what comes next. Yet the answer is always the same: this, here, now. You do not need to keep searching for the self, because the self you are seeking is the one who is aware of the search. And when you see this clearly, the compulsion to look outward softens, replaced by a quiet gratitude for what already is. If you have followed this path through every step, every insight, every question, you can feel the circle close, not as an ending, but as a return. The place you began is the place you remain. Now you see it without the haze of seeking. If you have listened this far, if you no longer have to look anywhere else, you are the thing you are looking for. Welcome home. And if these words have touched you, Share them so that others may remember too. Because among the millions of voices you could have been with today, you chose to be here. In this moment, with me, and for that, thank you.